I'm very happy to answer any questions you have about this presentation. Yeah?
In these early maps of the Carolina colony, were people recognized as professional cartographers, or was it more of a hobby?
Well, I guess if you got paid, you were a professional. But there's no union. The British don't yet have an academy, as they would develop at Woolwich, to train their naval surveyors. So people like John Ogilvy were kind of jacks of all trades. They wrote colonial pamphlets. They drafted maps. They were hack writers who were entering into this very lucrative business of helping powerful aristocratic men promote their colonies. And you know, British maps are interesting because in the French and the Spanish empires, they train their own map makers, and they often keep the maps quite secret. But the British actually use commercial cartographers and publish the maps widely, in part because they want to declare to the world that these are our colonies. And one of the ways they can show it is by mapping them very well. And so there's a very robust kind of private enterprise side to English cartography. Yeah?
How are these cartographers able to be so accurate?
Well, how were the cartographers? I mean, a lot of the maps do a pretty good job, right? How were they so accurate? Most of them aren't doing rigorous surveying work of the kind you would want if you surveyed your lot of property, right? It's mostly what they see, and a lot of it is synthesis. They look at other maps. They do running surveys along the coast to trace its contours. They actually read reports from explorers and try to paint in what they see. So what they come up with is often a hodgepodge that will have parts that are remarkably accurate and parts that are hopelessly distorted. So a lot of it is guesswork, but they're really joining a community of previous map makers and explorers and actively updating that information. One of the things I learned from putting all these maps together and studying them is that although people copied from their predecessors, the maps changed very quickly. People always wanted the latest information put in there. So when the map makers after 1670 had access to the land office records, they could put in new maps of Charleston, they could reshape the contours of the coastline, and those maps came into print pretty fast by early modern standards. People were hungry for the latest information, especially if you're a merchant or a colonist. You want to know what's there. You want to see it, and you want to have some confidence in it. Yeah?
Your Ogilvy map shows Eddie Still Island named Lock Island. How long did it retain that name?
I think only as long as that map was taken seriously. You know, this is the thing. I love that little vignette between Joseph West and Ashley Cooper. Everyone in Carolina who lives there calls it Kiowa or Albemarle Point. And he has to correct them, saying, no, we named it Charleston. Call it Charleston. But this shows that in the very early years of the Carolina colony, the Indians were the guides for these early colonists, and their language was incorporated into what the settlers used. It didn't matter as much at first what Lord Ashley was saying in a letter from London about what you should call things. They were using the language they found on the ground. But of course, some of those stuck, and some of those, you know, we still have Colleton County, for instance. The jurisdictional names have survived. But a lot of the place names that were named for powerful European men, some of them have lasted and some of them have faded. And one of the great ironies, and I think one of the great tragedies of this story, is whenever you see a map of Carolina and you see the names Santee and Sewee, all these interesting sounding place names, they're in use as the names of the rivers. But of course, the people who once held those names are nowhere to be found as people. There are some exceptions to that, but most of those Cusabo Indians are gone now. They don't exist as corporate groups in the way they had before. So I think that helped me read the maps in a different way as well. People in South Carolina aren't trying to paste over that and pretend the Indians never existed. They also don't feel guilty about pushing them off the land, because in their view, they've taken a wilderness and they've civilized it. They've improved it. They're proud of it. They don't want to, but they also have a romantic idea of the Indian past as well they want to preserve. It makes their colony seem exotic and interesting. Yeah?
With reference to the crisp map, I have the notion that he was a publisher in London and that the map was probably drawn by Thomas Nair. Is that correct?
The inset that he includes in the map is definitely drawn by Thomas Nairn. So the one that shows the greater Carolina stretching to the Mississippi. The map that shows the settled portions of the province is copied baldly from the Thornton Morden map. So what makes a good map maker in the colonial period isn't always originality. It's the power to synthesize other people's works. And I think Crisp was a kind of master synthesizer who took all the best maps at his disposal and put them together so that they put forward new messages. And so I think, to me, other than the de Bram map, which I think is a real masterpiece, the Crisp map is a really special and important map that has a lot of, for a historian who wants to interpret things, there's so much to look at in that map that's interesting and revealing.
And would you comment on the Muzan map, where that fits in?
The Muzan map's a little later for this period. I'm forgetting the date. Do you know offhand, is it a 1770s?
But not much, I don't think.
70s.
Yeah. Yeah, so, Muzan, and I think is this the map with the famous cartouche of indigo making on the plantation as well? I think that's it. I'd have to look it up. So I think Muzan, I don't know offhand his history and where he comes from, but I think he had some official capacity as a surveyor and drew on that data in order to draw that image. I've used that map before in looking at especially the expansion of the plantation countryside along in St. John's Parish along the Santee River. He's really the best, he has the best picture of that plantation settlement right before the Revolution.
One last question. I hope you're going to reduce all of this to writing and publish it in a convenient book for all of us.
Well, I am writing a book, and Harvard University Press will publish it as soon as I get them the manuscript, as my editor reminds me frequently when we meet. But she also said that she won't publish a big coffee table book with thousands of dollars worth of expensive maps. So that's why I built this. This is going to be what you look at when you read the book. And maybe by the time it's done, there'll be an ebook that blends them all together nicely. So I hope you've enjoyed the digital side, because to me, having all these beautiful high-resolution digital maps, I couldn't do them justice in black and white in 2 inches square. You really need to see them and be able to explore them. And so I'm building not only historical analysis, but visualizations that help, I think, walk through the maps. Yeah?
The mapping, it's amazing that in limited time, so to speak, they were able to do what they did and be as accurate. It stands to reason, there has to be a benchmark somewhere. It was the beginning from whence they went to perhaps go from one point up the coast and the coast inland. Any idea what that benchmark may have been?
Well, the only way to actually have a credible map is to do what William de Bram did and survey it on the ground with a compass and chain, taking astral measurements to figure out where you are, paying attention to latitude and longitude, calculating the variation from Greenwich, all that stuff. That is only done in little portions of the settled areas. So whenever you see a big 18th century map of North America, it's really a bunch of guesswork. No one has actually surveyed that in any rigorous way. But there is a power in the communal map-making body of knowledge that everyone draws on. And what I think people do is they look at the old maps and they say, well, we know this isn't quite right anymore. Let's leave that detail out that we know is wrong. And I have a new report of what this lake or river looks like or where it bends. Let's add that. Those little unscientific, unrigorous additions and subtractions, I think, actually whittle down to a pretty reliable and robust picture of space. And what I think I've been most impressed by is how much of a community these map makers are. They're constantly looking at each other's work and stealing whatever they can to make their maps better. So we should give them credit for being good thieves and not pretend that they're not original artists. Yeah, and then you.
Is Map Scholar, can you tell us a little bit about this website?
Yeah, so
and how that works?
Yeah, so Map Scholar is we're in the second year of a 3-year National Endowment for the Humanities grant to develop this. And I know NEH funding's been in the news lately. If you think this is valuable, it doesn't exist without the NEH. And next year is going to be our rollout year. So we're going to make this available to anyone who wants to display maps for teaching, publication, and any other use. What I like about it, I'm developing this with my colleague Bill Furster at the University of Virginia, who's a digital humanities specialist. He was one of the guys who invented the pan and scan software on Ken Burns movies. So he's a real design and computing expert, and we have a really wonderful collaboration. So we've joined forces to make this, and what I like about it is All of this is streaming on the internet. It's all free, and it will be available to anyone to use. And you don't need any special software. It just runs in your web browser. And I think it can be a pretty powerful tool to do the kind of digital humanities work that I think everyone's interested in now. So
It's not available yet.
if you have something you want to work on with MapScholar, you'd have to contact me, and we're developing a few collaborations now to test the resource. But in a year's time, we're going to roll it out, and it's going to be available to educators, scholars, and anyone who has images and maps they want to put out to share with others. Yeah?
Did the Indians have any map-making skill, or did they just watch the Europeans for amusement?
It's funny you should ask. When I got the 10-minute wrap-up signal, I skipped a couple maps, but I love this map, and I want to show it to you. So it's, there's really interesting Indian maps of Carolina, and the most important, I think, is the map the Catawba Indians created. It's called the, one second. It's called the Catawba deerskin map. So after the Yamasee War, the Catawbas actually killed a few English traders. So when the Yamasees were vanquished by John Barnwell and his forces, they really had to repair that relationship with the English. And one of the ways they did it is they had diplomatic meetings with the new governor, Francis Nicholson. And one of the gifts that the Catawba Indians gave to Francis Nicholson was this map, which is painted on a deerskin. You can see the hooves. And what it shows is how the Catawbas want the new relationship after the Yamasee War to be between them and the English. And what I love about this map is, some people call this a node and spoke map. It's not an objective vision of geographic space. It's about social relations. Every community is a circle, and every alliance is a line, right? That's how they view the world. It doesn't matter how close, it's like a subway map. It doesn't matter how close these things are. In fact, it's about how people are connected together. But I love that all of the Indian spaces are circles, and here's Virginia, it's a square. And here's what Indians think Charleston looks like. To them, it's this maze, this ridiculous grid, but they're interested in it. And so let me show you a detail here. So they're interested in it because they want to be the indispensable trading partners. Here's the English path to Nassau, which is the biggest circle. It's the biggest community. It's the center of the Catawba world. And that path leads to what was referred to in the 18th century as the Broad Path, which becomes King Street, right? So there's King Street. And this is the world they see, right? This is the world looking from the Atlantic. Here's the incomprehensible grid of Charleston. And here are the ships that bring all the things that they want, right? Here they bring all the iron kettles, they bring all the fabrics, they bring all the gunpowder. And of course, the reason they can get this stuff is because they're hunting for deerskins. And they want to be the intermediaries. Here's an Indian hunting with his rifle, right? They don't make rifles, they need to import that. And there's the buck he's about to shoot. And then he'll sell the hide to a Charlestown trader. And he'll get money for it. So this is an image that's saying, we really didn't mean it when we killed those traders. We want to be partners again. And this, of course, for Francis Nicholson and John Barnwell, this is exactly what they want to hear, right? They want to build a series of alliances and not aggressively expand into the interior anymore. So there's a lot more that could be said about this, but I think this is a really great example of that Indian map making.
On that note, let's continue our question to reception of dessert following this. And again, I want to thank Max for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you very much.
Really, it's really good.
Congratulations.
Really good.